Hello YouTube. Today we are going to be talking bodybuilding, and specifically I want to talk a little bit about my goals and how I'm planning to achieve them in the upcoming years. So I made a previous video about how I ran full body for 5 months and I did not see the best result on that. Something about the high frequency nature of the way that I was running it, and the fact that you had to do so many exercises on a day if you're doing it for bodybuilding purposes made it counterproductive to my goals and what exactly that I was trying to accomplish. So the way that I'm going to be approaching things from this point forward is, currently my body weight is 185, which isn't an all-time high for me. I've hit 193 in a lean state. Right now I'm pretty lean, somewhere around 10 to maybe 11% body fat, something in that range. So I'm pretty good fat to muscle ratio, but I am definitely plateauing on a lot of lifts. And that's because of basically the instability of the program at the moment. Just coming off a full body, I just knew I had to switch and I didn't really have something to rely on. So there's been a lot of manipulation going on these last few weeks to figure out what exactly I need. And I think I have an answer, and that's why I'm making this video. I ran upper lower for 2 years. This was the second and third year of my training. I have 5 years of experience now. And that split worked pretty well for me, and I ran it in a few different ways. But back then I was running it 6 days a week. And I could get away with that because I was in an early intermediate stage. Where I'm at right now is, obviously the strength level is increased, the recovery, the recoupability of my body isn't going to be the same. And so if I want to see success in the gym, 6 days a week, upper lower, and that's part of the reason why these last few weeks have been a little tough, because I experimented with that and the body just couldn't handle it now with the loads I'm currently lifting. So I think what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do upper lower, rest, repeat, which will be 2 days on, 1 day off, and that would allow for an adequate amount of recovery, and it would really allow me to stimulate the muscle and then get back into the gym exactly when I'll be fully recovered and able to train again, because that gives you the adequate 72-hour threshold to where when you get back in, you won't have a recovery deficit like you might have if you were doing training every 48 hours. And at the same time, it's not too much, where if you go into the 90 hours or some people, they might even do every 5 days, you're losing an opportunity, part of the window to where you could keep pushing yourself and gain momentum. And that's what I'm trying to do right now, is I'm trying to have a stable program. You could think of a program like a process. Like, if the net outcome is adding muscle to your frame, then the process that you want to do that is going to be the most efficient, optimal, and best process to reach that goal. And if you think about it like that, your split is just a process. And that's why it doesn't really matter which split you choose on on the basis of, like, this, I use rest pause. I'm talking about different techniques here. I use cheat reps. I use this. Like, everybody's going to have their different ideology when it comes to training. The ideology doesn't matter, right? What matters is the results. What matters is what do you put into practice, right? How do you set up the training to where it gets you your best and most optimal results, right? And I think if you think about it in an objective fashion like that, like, not necessarily how do I feel about this, right? And I think the feeling does play a part. I'm just saying that can't be the main driver of this process. What needs to be the main driver of the process is the objective at hand, the task at hand, the mission at hand. If the mission is to add muscle, right? Then, as a consequence, your split is going to be best aligned with that goal, if that makes sense. And the reason why it might sound a little heavy-handed the way that I'm putting it is because for so long, I trained intuitionally. For so long, it was more like, and I don't mean intuitionally like I went to the gym and did whatever. I was pretty regimented with my programming. But the split, the exercise selection, it was all like what I felt like doing, you know? And I think that will get you to a certain point until you're spinning your wheels, because it neglects to realize that training is a very complex thing. There's a lot of mathematics involved behind the process. If we think about tonnage, load management, there's the physiology involved, there's the biomechanics of the lifts involved. If it was easy to put on muscle, I mean, everybody would be walking around like 200 pounds and jacked, right? Or women who want to bodybuild, they'd be jacked, you know. But that's not the case. It's not easy to have a six-pack, big biceps, big triceps. You know, that's it's goal independent, of course, but it's not easy to be there. And the reason why it's not easy to be there is because it requires a lot of thought, calculation, and most people aren't going to be putting in that level of thought and calculation. So I think if you analyze it from that perspective, you're going to be putting yourself in a better place if you're thinking about your programming more. And I think the programming is going to be the essence of your of your ability to recover, which in the long run, over the course of weeks, months, is going to make or break your program. So I think I'm going to run the upper, lower, rest, repeat ad infinitum in a asynchronous style. So I'm not going to take a whole weekend off. It's just going to be that one day off and then come back in the gym. I think that's going to be the best to keep the flow going, to keep my ability to push myself. And that's basically how I plan on running the program for these next few weeks. And then another thing comes to mind here, which is your goals and what you want to prioritize in a given training period. And realizing that if your goal is to put on muscle, the process has to be in line with that goal, right? So if your process is like, hey, I'm going to come to the gym and do a 1 rep max, that is not going to be the most efficient way to get from A to B, right? If you're going to come to the gym and do maybe like 6 by 15 on a certain lift, that's probably not going to be the most efficient way to get from A to B, right? Especially knowing that doing a higher volume might put you in a recovery debt, right? Or if you're not doing reps in reserve, knowing that might put you in a recovery debt. If you're doing certain lifts that you know, hey, in 72 hours if I do this lift, I'm not going to be recovered, might put you in recovery debt. So that's the stimulus to fatigue aspect. And then there's the other end, knowing that, hey, if I don't do enough to stimulate the muscle, if I don't put enough mechanical tension on that muscle, I may not produce the growth, right? And then there's the out of the gym fats, there's the sleep, the food, but those should be given. But those are also things that need to be considered in the process. So thinking about the process in this manner is really important. So this is where I'm at now in regards to the upper lower. I think it is a great program, but I've run into a few problems in the past with it, and that's that on the upper day, you can have a whole ton of exercises. On the lower day, you can have not many. So lower days are naturally a lot more short. They're shorter than the upper days. And that can feel a little, you can sort of start to compensate on the lower days by doing some extra stuff for other body parts, stuff like that. But it's just, I'm not a huge fan of days that are just like, you're in gym one day for 2 hours and the next day you're in there for like 40 minutes. I'm not the biggest fan of that. Now, you can train legs for 2 hours, and I've done that in the past. But if you're training legs every 72 hours and you're strong, it's kind of depends on the person. But for me, that's pushing it. So that's one thing. Another thing that I'm thinking about as well is like, okay, well, that means that it's going to be very difficult to program arms, and arms are important for me. And so in the past, what I've done is I've just had it. You could have a separate arm day. You could have an upper body focused arm day, or you could just evenly spread out the arm tonnage. Like, those are 3 possible options. Because my goal right now is to put on muscle in a more holistic fashion, I'm not necessarily saying, hey, I just want jacked arms. I think what I'm going to do here is have an upper body, an arm biased upper body day, and that's going to be one of the days in the upper lower split. That way I'm still able to train upper body every 72 hours, and I don't have to calculate for having a separate arm day that ends up being, sometimes it feels on the borderline of junk volume, and I don't have to evenly spread out the tonnage of the arms across the upper body days, because when I do that, it always feels like arm training is an afterthought. It comes at the very end of the upper body training, and I think if you get in a habit of every upper body session, arms are relegated to the end and you train them at the end, and that's just how it is throughout your training cycle for 6 months to a year. Guess what's going to be the hanging fruit on your physique is going to be your arms, because you train them at the very end of your program, every upper body session after they're already taxed. And so what I think I'm going to do is have it, and this is similar to how I used to run it, where it's upper, lower, arm biased, upper, lower. I think if I do that over the course of, a few months, I'll quickly have some results on this, and then I can make a judgment about whether or not I'm really progressing in all areas, or if I need to sort of separate that arm volume into a different day, or maybe spread it out more evenly, or try something else. So those are some thoughts about the programming and where I'm planning to go with that. I hope some of that was helpful to any of you guys thinking about, okay, well, I know I sort of have an idea about my goals, or maybe I don't, and what's the process look like. So, you just need to figure out what it is that you desire, and what split, routine, lift selection, and all that is going to get you to the quickest and most optimal way from where you're at to where you're headed. Talk to you guys next time.